The dust rose like a vengeful spirit as Willow O'Malley was dragged across the town square, her wrists and ankles bound with iron chains that rattled with each forceful step of her captors. The year was 1876, and Dry Creek, Colorado had never seen such a spectacle. A woman accused of horse theft, headed for what many believed would be a swift hanging at the newly constructed gallows. Travis Stone watched from the shadow of the general store, his weathered hat pulled low over eyes that had seen too much death during the war. He'd ridden into town just that morning, looking for nothing but supplies and perhaps a warm meal before continuing north to Wyoming. Instead, he found himself transfixed by the injustice unfolding before him. "Ain't right," muttered old Hank beside him, spitting tobacco juice into the dirt. "That O'Malley girl never stole nothin' in her life." Travis adjusted his stance, hand instinctively moving to the worn grip of his Colt. "You know her. Everyone knows Willow, sweetest girl in the county. This is Burke Fletcher's doing. Wants her land since her pa died last winter." Travis watched as they forced Willow up the wooden steps to the platform. Her face was smudged with dirt, but her eyes blazed with defiance. Despite her torn dress and the blood trickling from her split lip, she held her head high. Something about her courage stirred something long dormant in Travis's heart. "They got any proof against her?" Travis asked. "Don't need much when Fletcher owns half the businesses in town and the sheriff's loyalty," Hank replied. "He planted them horses in her barn. Everyone knows it." The crowd had gathered, some jeering, others looking uncomfortable. Sheriff Wallace read out the charges in a booming voice while Fletcher stood nearby, a satisfied smirk playing on his face. Willow's voice rang out clear and strong. "I am innocent. You all know me. My father raised me better than to be a thief." Fletcher stepped forward. "Your father was a fool who couldn't hold onto his land. Like father, like daughter, I suppose." Travis had seen enough. He'd come home from the war 5 years ago determined to keep his head down to avoid other people's problems. But some things a man couldn't ignore and live with himself after. He stepped into the street, his spurs jingling with each determined stride. The crowd parted before him, sensing the deadly purpose in his walk. "Hold there," Travis called, his voice carrying across the suddenly hushed square. "I'd like to see the evidence against this woman." Sheriff Wallace squinted down at him. "This ain't your business, stranger. I'm making it my business." Travis climbed the steps to the platform, feeling every eye upon him. He could smell Willow's fear beneath a layer of determination. "In America, we don't hang people without a fair trial." Fletcher stepped forward. "She's had her trial." "When?" Travis challenged. "This morning while she was locked up. That's not how justice works." "Who the hell are you?" Fletcher demanded. "Name's Travis Stone. I fought for the Union so places like this could have law and order, not mockeries of justice." He turned to the crowd. "How many of you believe this woman stole horses? How many have ever known her to be anything but honest?" A murmur rippled through the gathering. An older woman called out, "Willow nursed my boy through scarlet fever last winter, never asked for a penny. She helped birth my twin girls," another voice added. Travis nodded. "Seems to me there's reasonable doubt." Fletcher's face flushed with anger. "Sheriff, remove this man." The sheriff hesitated, looking uncertain. Travis seized the moment and moved to Willow, examining her chains. "What are you doing?" she whispered, her eyes wide with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "Something I should have done the moment I saw them drag you up here," he replied quietly. Reaching for the lockpick set, he carried in his vest pocket a souvenir from his scouting days during the war. The first lock on her wrist chains clicked open. The crowd gasped. "Stop him!" Fletcher shouted, but no one moved. "These chains are illegal punishment before a proper trial," Travis announced loudly. "And I suspect Mr. Fletcher here has a vested interest in seeing this woman hanged without one." The second lock fell open as Fletcher lunged forward. Travis sidestepped smoothly, sending the man sprawling across the platform. "Miss O'Malley owns the water rights to the North Creek, doesn't she?" Travis continued, working on her ankle chains now. Mighty convenient for someone looking to expand their cattle operation if she weren't around to claim them. A wave of understanding passed through the crowd. Several men stepped forward, including the blacksmith whose massive arms were crossed over his chest. "That true, Fletcher?" The blacksmith demanded. "You framing this girl for her water rights?" The third lock clicked open as Fletcher scrambled to his feet, his face contorted with rage. "This is outrageous. Sheriff, do your duty." Sheriff Wallace looked from Fletcher to the increasingly hostile crowd, then to Travis, who now stood protectively beside Willow, the final chain falling away. "I think maybe we ought to look into this matter more thoroughly," the sheriff said slowly. "Miss O'Malley can return home under watch until we sort this out." "The hell she will." Fletcher drew his pistol, aiming it squarely at Willow. "She's a thief," and the sound of Travis's Colt clearing its holster was like a crack of lightning. He didn't aim at Fletcher, only up into the air, but the message was clear. "Lower your weapon," Travis said quietly, "or the next one finds you." Fletcher hesitated, then slowly lowered his gun. Travis nodded to the sheriff. "I think you'll find those horses have Fletcher's brand underneath a fresh one. Might want to check that." 2 days later, Travis sat on the porch of Willow's modest farmhouse, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains gold and crimson. The investigation had revealed exactly what he'd suspected. Fletcher had stolen his own horses, planted them on Willow's property, and filed false charges. The door creaked open behind him, and Willow stepped out carrying 2 cups of coffee. The bruises on her face were fading to yellow, but her smile was bright as morning sunshine. "I still don't know how to thank you," she said, handing him a steaming cup. Travis accepted it with a nod. "No need. Couldn't stand by and watch an innocent person suffer." Most men would have. She settled into the chair beside him, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "Why were you different?" Travis stared into his coffee, memories of the war flickering through his mind. "Saw too much injustice during the fighting. Promised myself I'd never walk past it again if I could help." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sounds the chirping of crickets and the distant lowing of Willow's small herd of cattle. "Where will you go now?" she asked finally. "Wyoming, I suppose. Heard there's ranch work up there." Willow nodded slowly. "My farm needs help. The drought's been hard and since Pa died." She trailed off, then squared her shoulders. "I could use a hired hand. Pay wouldn't be much, but there's food and a cabin out back." Travis studied her face, seeing determination there and something else that made his heart quicken. He'd planned to move on, as he always did, never staying in one place long enough for the nightmares to catch up with him. But something about Willow O'Malley and her struggling farm called to him like nothing had in years. "I'll stay through the harvest," he said finally. "After that, we'll see." Willow smiled, and Travis felt a strange lightness in his chest, as if one of the chains that had bound him since the war had just fallen away. The summer of 1876 blazed across the Colorado foothills with relentless heat. Travis rose before dawn each day, repairing fences, tending the small herd, and helping Willow coax life from the parched soil of her vegetable garden. They worked side by side from sunrise until the stars emerged, speaking little but developing a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. One evening in July, they sat beneath the old oak tree after supper, Travis whittling a piece of pine while Willow mended a shirt. "You never talk about your family," Willow observed, her needle flashing in the fading light. Travis's hands stilled. "Not much to tell. Parents died when I was young. Raised by my uncle in Missouri until I was old enough to join up." "The war changed you," she said. "It wasn't a question. Changes everyone who lives through it." He resumed whittling, curls of wood falling to the ground. "Lost my brother at Antietam, my best friend at Gettysburg." Willow set her mending aside. "My mother died when I was 12. Fever took her. Pa never remarried, just threw himself into building this place." Her gaze swept across the modest farm. "He always said land was the only thing worth having because it can't be stolen away like people can." "Smart man." "Stubborn man," she corrected with a small smile. Like his daughter, Travis looked up, meeting her eyes. Stubbornness kept this place running, kept you alive when Fletcher tried to take it all. And brought you here," she added softly. The air between them seemed to thicken. Travis felt a pull toward her that frightened him more than any gun battle ever had. He stood abruptly, pocketing his knife. Best get some sleep. Early start tomorrow. He retreated to the small cabin behind the main house, but sleep eluded him. Through the open window, he could hear Willow moving about in the house, the soft sound of her humming an old folk song his mother used to sing. The melody followed him into uneasy dreams of battlefields and chains. The next morning brought news that Fletcher had been released from jail on bail. Travis frowned as Willow relayed what she'd heard from the general store owner who delivered their monthly supplies. "He won't stop," Travis said, checking the load in his revolver. "Men like Fletcher don't know how." "I won't live in fear," Willow replied, her chin lifted in that stubborn way that had begun to endear itself to Travis. "This is my home." True to her word, Willow continued her routine as if Fletcher posed no threat. She rode into town for church on Sunday, delivered preserves to elderly neighbors, and worked the farm with unwavering determination. Travis found himself watching her with growing admiration and something deeper that he dared not name. August brought the first signs of harvest and a drought-breaking thunderstorm that sent them racing to bring in the washing from the line. They collided in the yard, both grabbing for a flapping sheet, laughing as the rain soaked them to the skin. For a moment they stood close enough that Travis could see the raindrops clinging to Willow's eyelashes, could feel the warmth of her breath. "Travis," she whispered, her hand finding his arm. He stepped back, the moment broken. "I'll check the barn," he said gruffly. "Make sure nothing's leaking." He strode away, cursing himself for a coward. The truth was, Willow O'Malley deserved better than a man haunted by war, a drifter with nothing to his name but a horse and a gun. She deserved roots and stability, everything he'd spent 5 years avoiding. The harvest kept them both too busy for much talk in the days that followed. They worked side by side, their bodies moving in tandem from dawn till dusk. At night, Travis would return to his cabin and lie awake, listening to the coyotes in the distance and wondering how much longer he could deny what was growing between them. It was the first cool evening in September when everything changed. Travis was returning from town with supplies when he spotted the smoke. Black and thick, it rose from the direction of Willow's farm, sending him into a gallop, his heart pounding with dread. The barn was ablaze, flames reaching skyward as if determined to burn a hole in the heavens themselves. Travis leapt from his horse, eyes scanning frantically for Willow. He found her at the well, desperately filling buckets. "The horses," she cried when she saw him. "They're still inside." Without hesitation, Travis ran toward the burning structure, tying his bandana over his mouth and nose. The heat hit him like a physical blow as he forced his way through the door, eyes stinging from the smoke. He could hear the panicked whinnying of the horses, their hooves striking the stalls in terror. He found them in the back, 3 horses wide-eyed with fear. One by one he freed them, slapping their rumps to send them charging out the door to safety. The last one, Willow's prized mare, was nearly hysterical with fear. As Travis worked to calm her enough to lead her out, a burning beam crashed down beside them, sending up a shower of sparks. The mare bolted past him, nearly knocking him down. Travis turned to follow but found his exit blocked by fallen timbers. Choking on smoke, he searched desperately for another way out as the flames climbed higher around him. Through the smoke, he spotted a small window at the back of the barn. Without time to consider, he ran for it, crashing through the glass and wooden frame as the roof began to collapse behind him. He landed hard on the ground outside, rolling to extinguish the sparks on his clothing. Willow was at his side in an instant, helping him away from the burning building, her face streaked with tears and soot. "I thought you were dead," she sobbed, her hands checking him for injuries. "I thought I'd lost you too," Travis coughed, his lungs burning. "Takes more than a fire to kill me," he managed. They watched helplessly as the barn burned to the ground, too far gone to save despite their efforts with buckets of water. When it was over, nothing remained but smoldering ruins and the acrid smell of smoke. "Fletcher," Travis said, his voice rough from smoke and anger. "Had to be," Willow nodded, her face set in grim lines. "The sheriff won't do anything, not with real proof. Then we'll get proof." Travis stood, wincing at the pain in his ribs where he'd hit the ground. "But first, we need to make sure you're safe." That night, Travis moved his bedroll into the main house, sleeping by the door with his rifle across his lap. Willow had protested at first, then relented when he pointed out that Fletcher might not stop at burning barns. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked as she prepared to retire to her bedroom. "You could have ridden on weeks ago." Travis was silent for a long moment. "Some things a man can't walk away from." "Is that all I am? A responsibility, an obligation?" Her voice held a challenge. Travis met her gaze, feeling the walls he'd built around his heart beginning to crumble. "No, Willow, you're a lot more than that." She moved toward him then, her steps deliberate until she stood close enough that he could smell the lavender soap she used. "Show me," she whispered. His resolve broke like a dam. Travis pulled her to him, his lips finding hers in a kiss that spoke of all the words he couldn't say. She responded with equal fervor, her arms twining around his neck as if she'd been waiting for this moment as long as he had. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Travis rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since I first saw you stand up to those men on that platform," Willow smiled. "I've wanted you to since you broke those chains." They spent the night talking, sharing stories of their lives before they'd met, stealing kisses between confessions. Travis told her things he'd never told another soul about the nightmares that still plagued him, the guilt he carried for surviving when so many hadn't. Willow listened, sometimes with tears in her eyes, sometimes with gentle laughter, but always with understanding. As dawn broke, they made plans. They would gather evidence against Fletcher, prove he was behind the barn burning and the false charges. Together, they would ensure he could never threaten Willow or her farm again. "And after?" Willow asked, her head resting on his shoulder as they watched the sunrise through the window. "What happens then, Travis Stone?" He took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "That depends on whether a stubborn farmer might consider keeping a war-worn cowboy around permanently." Her answer was another kiss, one that promised a future neither had dared to imagine before. The investigation into Fletcher took unexpected turns. Travis discovered that Fletcher had bribed several ranch hands to testify against Willow in the horse theft case. With careful work and some well-placed coins of his own, Travis convinced one of these men to recant his story and provide a signed confession about Fletcher's plot. Meanwhile, Willow found unexpected allies in town. The blacksmith's wife, who served as a cook in Fletcher's ranch house, overheard Fletcher boasting about the barn fire to his foreman. She risked her position to bring this information to Willow, along with details about Fletcher's plans to dam the creek that ran through both properties, effectively cutting off Willow's water supply. Armed with this evidence, they approached Judge Harrison, who had recently arrived from Denver to oversee the territorial court. Unlike the local sheriff, Harrison had no ties to Fletcher and was known for his strict adherence to the law. The confrontation came on a crisp October morning in the judge's temporary chambers above the general store. Fletcher arrived expecting a private meeting about water rights, only to find himself facing Travis, Willow, and the witnesses they had gathered. "This is absurd." Fletcher exploded when the judge outlined the accusations. "These people are trying to ruin me." "Interesting choice of words," Travis commented, "considering that's exactly what you tried to do to Miss O'Malley." Judge Harrison reviewed the signed confessions, listened to testimony from the blacksmith's wife, and examined the documentation of Fletcher's irregular land purchases over the years, a pattern of intimidation and fraud that extended well beyond his dealings with Willow. "Mr. Fletcher," the judge said finally, I find sufficient evidence to bind you over for trial on multiple charges including arson, conspiracy, perjury, and attempted fraud. Sheriff, take him into custody." Fletcher's face twisted with hatred as the sheriff reluctantly placed him in handcuffs. "This isn't over," he spat at Willow. "No one crosses Burke Fletcher and gets away with it." "Actually, sir," Travis said calmly, "I believe it is over. The territorial governor has been informed of your activities. Even if you somehow avoid prison, your days of terrorizing this community are finished." As Fletcher was led away, the tension that had held Willow rigid for weeks seemed to drain from her body. Outside in the autumn sunshine, she took Travis's hand. "Thank you," she said simply, "for believing in me when no one else would." Travis squeezed her hand. "You believed in yourself first. I just followed your lead." They walked back to the farm in companionable silence, stopping occasionally to accept congratulations from townspeople who had heard the news. By the time they reached Willow's property, the sun was setting, painting the newly constructed barn frame in golden light. Neighbors had helped raise it while they were fighting Fletcher in town, a testament to the community's changing attitude. "It's beautiful," Willow said, surveying the work. "Like its owner," Travis replied, drawing her into his arms. That night, as they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge, Travis reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, a ring fashioned from a silver dollar, polished to a high shine. "It's not fancy," he said, suddenly nervous. "And I'll get you a proper one when we can afford it, but it's perfect," Willow interrupted, tears shining in her eyes. "Absolutely perfect. Willow O'Malley, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I can't offer much beyond these 2 hands and a heart that's yours completely." "That's all I've ever wanted," she whispered, holding out her hand so he could slip the ring onto her finger. "Just you, Travis Stone, just you." They were married on Christmas Day in the small church in Dry Creek. The entire town turned out for the celebration, the past animosities forgotten in the spirit of new beginnings. Even the weather cooperated, providing a light dusting of snow that transformed the landscape into a winter wonderland. Willow wore her mother's dress, carefully altered by the blacksmith's wife, with evergreen sprigs in her hair. Travis, in a new suit purchased with savings from his army days, waited for her at the altar with a look of wonder that made several of the town's older women dab at their eyes with handkerchiefs. "Never thought I'd see Stone look at anything that way," commented one of the cowboys who'd served with Travis during the war. "Man was cold as ice in battle." "Love changes a person," replied the pastor's wife sagely. "Heals wounds we didn't even know were there." The winter passed in a blur of happiness for the newlyweds. They worked side by side to prepare for spring planting, expanding the farm's operations with the settlement money Fletcher was ordered to pay for damages. Travis's nightmares, once a nightly occurrence, came less frequently now, soothed by Willow's presence and the peace he'd found in their shared life. Spring brought news that Fletcher, awaiting trial in Denver, had attempted to bribe a guard and escape. The resulting scuffle left him with injuries from which he would not recover. Travis received the news with solemn acknowledgement rather than satisfaction. "Don't seem right to celebrate any man's passing," he told Willow as they planted the vegetable garden together. "Even one who caused so much harm," she nodded, understanding as always. "It's over now, truly over." As summer approached, bringing with it the promise of abundant crops and the first anniversary of Travis's arrival in Dry Creek, Willow shared news of her own. "The doctor confirmed it yesterday," she said, taking Travis's hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "We'll be 3 by Christmas." Travis stared at her in wonder, then let out a whoop that startled the chickens in the yard. He lifted Willow and spun her around, his laughter joining with hers in the clear morning air. "A baby," he breathed when he set her down. "Our baby. Our future," she corrected, her eyes shining with love. "Everything we fought for." 5 years later, Travis stood on the porch of the expanded farmhouse, watching Willow chase their laughing children across the yard. 4-year-old Thomas had his father's determined stride, while 2-year-old Emma toddled after them, her auburn curls bouncing with each step. The farm had prospered beyond their wildest dreams. The water rights that Fletcher had coveted proved valuable indeed when the railroad came through the next county, bringing new markets for their crops and cattle. Travis and Willow had purchased adjoining land, hired hands to help with the expanding operation, and built a reputation for fair dealing and hard work. Willow joined him on the porch, slipping her arm around his waist as they watched their children play. "What are you thinking about, Cowboy?" she asked, using the nickname that had stuck from their first meeting. Travis smiled, pulling her closer. "About chains," he said. "The ones that held you on that platform, the ones I carried inside me after the war, the ones Fletcher tried to place on this whole community." "All broken now," Willow said softly. "All broken," he agreed, kissing the top of her head. "Replaced by something stronger." "Love," she said simply. Travis nodded, watching as Thomas helped Emma up after a tumble, the little boy already showing the protective instincts of his father. "Love," he repeated. "The strongest chain of all and the only one worth wearing." As the sun set over their thriving farm, painting the Colorado sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Travis Stone silently thanked whatever twist of fate had brought him to Dry Creek that fateful day. He had ridden into town a solitary drifter, haunted by the past and afraid of the future. He had found instead a purpose, a home, and a love that had transformed him as surely as he had transformed those iron chains on the gallows platform. Some chains bound a person to darkness and pain. Others, like the ones that now linked his heart to Willow's and their children's, bound them to light and hope and endless possibility. In finding the courage to break the first kind, Travis had discovered the blessing of the second, a lesson he carried with him every day of their shared life on the frontier they now called home.